is M. Owen Lee, Professor of Greek and Latin Classical Literature at the University of Toronto. Father Lee will discuss Virgil, the Aeneid, and Berlioz, and he will illustrate his commentary at the Baldwin. Father Lee.
Thank you, Peter Allen. Deep in the vaults of the Vatican Library, there rests a lordly, venerable manuscript that we ought to honor here this afternoon. It is called the Codex Palatinus, and it is the oldest manuscript to contain virtually all of the writings of the poet Virgil, who lived out his lifetime in Italy just before the birth of Christ. Usually, with a Latin author from antiquity, we are lucky if we have a manuscript as close to him as the 12th century. But with Virgil, most quoted and loved of all ancient writers, manuscripts from the 6th and 5th and even the 4th centuries have survived. Florence and Verona and St. Gallen have some of them, but the others rightly reside in Rome, in the library of the popes. Rightly, for Virgil's greatest work, the Aeneid, is the epic of Rome, of its ambivalent past and its long future. One year I taught in Rome. In fact, I taught Virgil's Aeneid there to young American students. And that year I realized my ambition to see the Codex Palatinus. Doing so was not exactly easy. I had to convince the serious librarians in the Vatican that I was, if not a serious scholar, serious at least about seeing the great Virgilian manuscript. They were understandably wary of entrusting one of their deathless treasures to my mortal hands. They looked on me suspiciously as one who was in pursuit of an aesthetic experience, not a scholarly one. Well, they were right. But in the end, they brought the 4th century tome to my assigned desk and carefully placed it on my assigned lectern. I was given careful instructions, which I was careful to follow. My hands trembled as they touched. My eyes misted as they scanned those ancient pages. The familiar Latin lines in beautifully clear capital letters looked out at me searchingly across the centuries. Here first were Virgil's eclogues, Titere tu Patulae. In them, the young Virgil wonders, will our world heal itself, or will it give way to the self-destructive forces within it? Beneath their delicate surfaces, the 10 Arcadian miniatures of shepherds and satyrs and swains dramatize a great moment in history, a time between war and peace, and they all but predict the birth of Christ. But we can never be sure of what they mean. They are elusive and subtle and sad. The promise of rebirth is there in Arcadia. Death is there too. And here before my eyes, as the pages turn, are Virgil's Georgics, quid faciat laetas segetes, instructions on plowing, tending vines, breeding livestock, caring for bees, love of the land, a belief that a providential power is alive in the world, a power that needs man to work its purposes. Virgil, now in his 30s, thinks he may have been too pessimistic before. Rebirth is a possibility. Civilization can survive the destructive impulses in man. World peace has been won, and Italy has begun to rework its countryside. But then, to end his Georgics, Virgil tells a story we opera lovers know well, how Orpheus descended to the world of the dead to bring back his Eurydice and lost her. He uses myth to wonder more about rebirth and survival, and he finds again mostly sad and ambivalent answers. And here, pages of the manuscript, I see, have fallen away across the centuries. Finally, before my eyes, there is the great Aeneid, the panoramic story of the Trojan hero Aeneas, who survives the fall of his city and leads his followers over the sea to Carthage, and then to Italy, who descends to the world of the dead to glimpse his future, and then fights long, agonizing wars to win his peace. This longest and last of Virgil's works is the saddest and most ambivalent of all. No hero is so flawed, so failed, as the pious Aeneas. No universe so full of chaotic forces and senseless suffering as the world through which he moves. No century, until perhaps our own, was so much in need of absolving its personal and national guilt as the century in which Virgil was writing. A century of war. Aeneas is a figure for a man of that century, a man who took up arms and won the world peace, but at a terrible cost. Caesar Augustus, the Aeneid was written for him. Arma virumque cano, it begins, perhaps the most famous words ever written in Europe. Armed and the man I sing. The man whose arms made half the map of Europe Latin, and perhaps half of the whole world Western, forever after. And the song, there it is before my eyes, the Aeneid. T.S. Eliot declared it a song more civilizing than any that ever has been, ever would be, ever could be, because it pondered that ever after, including our century, and counted the cost. Virgil's Aeneid shaped the poetry of Ovid and the prose of Tacitus. Augustus used it as his conscience, Hadrian to tell the future. One book of it moved St. Augustine to tears. One line of it sent Savonarola into monastic orders. Some of it found its way for a while into the canon of sacred scripture itself. For Dante, Virgil was maestro and dottore, a guide through the past and the world beyond. Michelangelo, painting the Sistine Chapel, gave Virgil a parallel place with the Bible in telling of man's fatal flaw and his future promise. Siena and Florence shaped their histories. Milton and Tasso fashioned their epics under Virgil's influence. Young Bernini, helped by his father, sculpted Aeneas escaping from Troy with his father on his back. Young Berlioz, helped by his father, trembled with emotion when he read in Latin of Dido gazing upwards, searching for the light before she dies, and finding it. It is Berlioz we are hearing today, Virgil through his sensibility. All his life, Berlioz was haunted by the Aeneid, and near the end of it he wrote, as an act of homage, Les Troyens. Not all of the Aeneid, just incidents chosen from little more than 3 books of Virgil's 12. Not much at all of Virgil's searching for answers, of his theological sense of history, of his majestic sadness of the doubtful doom of humankind. Berlioz is mostly juxtaposed surfaces and contrasts, grand themes and noble stylized feeling. In the tradition of the French lyric theater, he provides a series of tableaux vivants. The long speeches in his opera seem to me a little chiseled and cold, classicism in the wrong sense. But most of Les Troyens is quick and tense with feeling, as a real classic must be. Gradually we are coming to see it as the classic of French opera. A lesser composer would have equipped his Trojans, destined out of defeat to found the greatest city in history, with an unequivocal, rousing theme, like Gounod wrote for his soldiers in Faust, or Meyerbeer for his Huguenots, or Saint-Saëns for his Israelites. But Berlioz's Trojans are unique. They are tough warriors from an exotic, decadent city, charged with a civilizing mission they do not fully understand. They are grandly barbaric, like wolves, and thick-tongued trumpets indicate their ambivalent sense of history. Berlioz, named for Hector, the greatest Trojan of them all, caught something of Hector's Asiatic spirit in that remarkable march with its swirling triplets. Surely he had the sound of Virgil in his head, for Virgil's meter is fashioned from a kind of triplet called the dactyl. 3 syllables, a long followed by 2 shorts, as in the names Jupiter, Romulus, Hannibal. It is a rhythm that in Virgil's hands can be made to sound barbaric and quick, as when the Trojan cavalry thunders across the dusty plain, quadrupetanticu trensanitu patidungula campum. The same meter can suggest processional grandeur, as when Virgil says, Tu reger imperio populos Romane memento. That line means, remember, O Roman, it will be your mission to rule the world. And when Berlioz first parades his royal Romans to be, the Trojans, across his stage, the music is truly Virgilian. It suggested to one critic, quote, the warriors who march in angular profile across some ancient sculpted frieze. True enough. But as Berlioz has his Trojans sing at that moment, attendez les accents, that is, listen to the rhythm. Not just sculpture, that's meter, dactylic meter. The same sound can, in Virgil's hands, be made as light and whispery as the darkness he made visible. In Virgil, sleep comes lightly, gliding down from the silent stars. Cum levis aeteri iste lapsus somnus ab astris. Berlioz puts it like this. Is the introduction to the duet of Dido and Aeneas, Nuit d'Ivresse, Berlioz' whispering nocturne, his sleepy, moonlit seascape of a duet. In it, Berlioz borrows from Shakespeare, turning English to French. And why not? Virgil, when he wrote his Aeneid, turned parts of Homer and Greek tragedy and Greek philosophy into Latin, because he wanted his poem to be, among other things, a compendium of the wisdom of the past. Why then ought Berlioz not to introduce at this magical moment Shakespeare, who had Lorenzo say to Jessica in The Merchant of Venice, the moon shines bright. On such a night as this stood Dido with a willow in her hand upon the wild sea banks, and waft her love to come again to Carthage. On such a night becomes par une telle nuit, and Berlioz accents his 6/8 time so that Shakespeare in French comes out sounding like Virgil's hexameter. Not put all of the Aeneid on the stage. Even at the prodigious length he opted for, he had to sacrifice Virgil's greatest book, the sixth, the hero's descent to the world of the dead, passing through the darkness with a gleaming golden bow. Berlioz also had to sacrifice all the wars in Italy and the characters he loved most after Dido, Camilla, the Italian Joan of Arc, and Turnus, the Italian Lancelot. But Berlioz used what he could. Some things from the end of the Aeneid he knew he had to use. He took from there the poignant words Aeneas speaks to his little son as he kisses him through his helmet. Learn from me, my son, what it is to be a man and to suffer. Learn from others what it is to be happy. Finally, Berlioz achieved his subtlest combination of literary and musical effects in the offstage song of a character of his own invention, a young sailor swaying in the masthead as his Trojan ship lies at anchor. The boy wonders whether he will ever sing again beneath the great trees of his Trojan mountain where he bade his mother goodbye. He calls on the sea to be his mother now and rock him on her breast. His sea song becomes a cradle song. His own son was away from home, serving in the French merchant navy. I thought of you, dear Louis, when I wrote it, he said in a letter. But the song is more than just a personal touch. It is truly Virgilian, prophetic, and pessimistic. Berlioz has two plain-spoken soldiers comment, he's dreaming of his homeland, which he'll never see again. And then, under the song, the orchestra surges ominously like the sea. The young sailor falls asleep. We never hear of him again. But those who know Berlioz' way with his orchestra suspect that this young sailor will be drowned at sea. And those of us who know Virgil are sure of it. For Berlioz has named the boy Hylas. And Hylas is the name of a mythical boy drowned in both the eclogues and the Georgics. Another sailor drowns famously in the Aeneid. He falls asleep at his post. God sends him a dream, and when it comes gliding down to him from the silent stars, he too drops to his death in the sea. In Virgil, the young and the innocent die. Virgil does not know why that must be, except that there are always wars. That is the way the world turns. Virgil wonders and weeps over that world. And as Virgil's pages turn, I come to the end in the Vatican Library of his 20 centuries old poem. Aeneas stands on the last page, caught agonizingly in the act of killing so that civilization can survive. He has been assured that this is the will of God. But is it? The Aeneid ends ambivalently, abruptly, shockingly. Its words stare out at me now across 100 generations of men. Virgil's unanswered questions crowd in on me. What is God? Why is there evil in the world? Why, in order that good may come, must the innocent suffer? What is the fatal flaw in man that makes him destroy? If we are so given to violence, what can the future hold for us? Will our world survive, or will we destroy ourselves? These are, of course, contemporary questions, but posed 20 centuries ago. Something of them is in the opera the Metropolitan has chosen to open its new century. The opera we are hearing this afternoon. As we face the future, they are unanswered questions we all must ponder.
Thank you, Father.